Are y'all seeing what I'm seeing? Are you hearing what I'm hearing? Are you feeling what I'm feeling? Because it feels to me like a lot of people are trying to move as if Black Lives Matter is a thing of the past, a silly thing, something that never happened, something that we can walk back. As a matter of fact, you hardly hear phrases like Black Lives Matter in 2026. And I think that's for a variety of reasons. I think that a lot of folks are trying to hang on to the old world as much as possible. They're trying to hang on to something. And they think that it's not possible to strive for a free Palestine or strive for affordability measures or strive for any kind of change in the world and also fight anti-blackness. Folks don't think it's possible. They want you to think it's not possible. But not only is it possible, it's the only way. Today we're going to talk about, from a political level, but also just at a social and cultural level, how folks have failed to remember what changed, to remember the movements that came before us and the way that we got here. And we are going to sit at the top of this current mountain of shit, and we're going to look out in the distance, and we're going to plan how we're going to move forward. And part of that plan means a lot of these folks are going to be left behind. A lot of you are not with it, and that's just how it's going to be. But for the folks that are feeling it right now, that are feeling the weight of how much institutional and social pressure is being exacted to silence anything conceived as radical politics, to normalize small measures in the direction of what we need, but not nearly enough. For folks who are feeling the weight of economic crises, social and political crises, global crises at the grocery store, at the gas pump, in your social media discourse, in your classrooms, in your workplace, for folks who are feeling it and who have decided it's over, I can't do that anymore, I need the next thing, I need the next world yesterday, we're going to have a chat. We're going to have a chit chat about how far we've come and what is so important in our next steps so as to make the eradication of fear an absolute necessity. So let's start with woke one. The word stakes gets manipulated a lot. It's a concept offered in every excuse, always weaponized, never understood. When non-Black folks decided to condense the political movements and cultural changes of the late 2010s and early 2020s, punctuated by the Black Lives Matter movement of 2020, into a singular regime of failed progressivism called Woke One, they did so winking tearily at an imagined naivety, with an air of nostalgia for times in which the stakes were, presumably, not so high. This is why words are not words, and ideas are not ideas. Because if each of us see in vastly different shapes and colors, what does it really mean for us to point at the same image? Woke one is a term that has been bandied about, joked about for about a year or two. It's the latest in several chapters of the bastardization of the term woke. Now, that bastardization is a complex process in which some of us use this bastardized term, woke, which, as we'll review in a second, originally meant something very important as far as consciousness of world oppression in the Black community. But some folks responded to that bastardization by satirizing it, by playing along with it, by using it as shorthand. And while there's no merit to that approach, we also have to be very careful, because when we say, oh, woke one was something else, remember woke one? Now we're in woke two. We may mean something very different from what other people mean by that. Case in point, let's talk about the center of today's discourse, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who will most likely be running for presidential office in the United States in 2 years. She recently did an interview on CNN. I'm going to show you the clip of New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani being asked about it, but just to show the AOC clip, just because I think this is a good way to show it.
Ask you about something AOC said over the weekend that you probably heard in an interview.
I have a local city councilman that has this saying woke one was crazy.
You briefly supported the idea of defunding the police.
Well, I think that during this time and especially during COVID, there was a huge opening of the Overton window. We were shut down. There was some of the highest unemployment rates that we have seen because of those shutdowns. Yeah. And I think that the doors were really open in trying to entertain any and every policy that was going to get us to a better place.
Do you think?
Thank you so much, Chinyere Sampson, for the donation. I think people's true priorities eventually come up, especially continuing to use the word woke as a negative word, meaning fighting injustice at home was never a priority for these people because they are privileged. Excellently put. So what AOC is doing in this clip is essentially talking about why she walked back on her position that one should defund the police, that we should defund or abolish the police, that police institutions also are necessarily racist and necessarily problematic. And this is something that a lot of people have given her pushback for. Folks in my chat currently are quite infuriated at her for saying this. Understandably, because not only are you backing down from a position, not only are you backing down from a fundamentally important position, but you're backing down from a position that has to do with literally the loss of Black life, with literally the most violent thing that we all were up in arms about just 6 years ago, and that we were supposed to have taken as this landmark moment when we acknowledged being up in arms about it, when we came together and discussed it, when the social fabric changed as a result. And instead, nakedly, we are seeing politicians, as well as many of their supporters, push against that and say, we're kind of past that. It was an innocent time. It was a bit of a silly time, perhaps, but these calls for defunding the police or prison abolition or systemic anti-blackness in policing and prison, that's something that we can't really talk about right now. You know, there was an opportunity for the Overton window to shift, she says. So we were pushing hard in a certain direction. The first thing that I want to say is this is funny to me. What's funny to me is that I don't know why some of you are so mad that she said this and so happy to make fun of her for saying this, because this is what many of you have been doing the whole time. Your unprincipled asses have been backing down on anti-blackness in policing and on defund or abolish the police rhetoric for a long time. It just so happens that AOC has a talent, a natural talent, for saying the thing out loud and for committing gaffes that bring people together and making fun of her for it. But in reality, I don't trust a lot of you who are sitting here critiquing or making fun of her for this thing that she said on CNN, because I see you embodying these same lack of principles in different ways. Between standing DSA politicians or other elected officials in other countries, United Kingdom, we see you. If you think Andy Burnham is going to do the thing, he's not. Or anybody who's supporting, social democrat politicians around the world with the same fervor that they would support a football club. Instead of holding them accountable the way that folks said that they would. Remember that? Or when it came to ignoring the violence and impoverishment of Black Americans again and pretending that they're the same class group as white Americans. The people who are using terms like Black America KKK-ans, literally fucking using terminology from Black radical movements and saying Black Americans are like that. Wild. Or the dismissal of any discussions of race since Trump's election as liberal identity politics, even down to jokes about being the too woke friend. Folks who are considering themselves open-minded, left-leaning, progressive, or liberal have been paving the way for politicians to act this way the whole time. There is no habit more consistent in the history of Western politics than abandoning Black communities. And so the fact that a lot of people are jumping AOC for it strikes me at first as a little bit odd, because she's not even the first politician to do this. Again, she's just the type of person that commits the kind of gaffes that make these conversations unavoidable. And so I actually appreciate her for it. I'm grateful for her because she has a way of perfectly summating the problem with how we approach progressivism. We treat politicians like celebrities to be stand. We treat progressive ideals like identities that we can sticker onto ourselves to make us look cool on Twitter. But when it comes down to it, between her support for the Iron Dome, her bizarrely performative pictures at an immigrant camp years ago, and now this, she is the kind of person who will bravely sacrifice her public perception so that folks across the US-focused left, meaning all the people who spend a lot of time talking about US politics, for understandable reasons given the global implications, can come together and say, fuck this shit. So now what? Well, let's articulate straightforwardly what these people and what everyone else clinging to this rotten corpse of an empire are trying to do. They're trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to coast off of years of Black radical organizing and anti-capitalist consciousness work while folding to billionaire fascists in creative new ways. They're trying to move like Black Lives Matter doesn't matter anymore. Now, as I've said, AOC is not the only person to do this. Just last week, Francesca Hong, who was running for governor in Wisconsin, backtracked from her statements about abolishing ICE or defunding the police. She had a call to cancel Thanksgiving that she deleted. She also now says that Thanksgiving is her favorite holiday. This is the Fox News reporting on this. She flip-flops on abolish the police and says she's serious about public safety. She previously asserted that police exist to uphold white supremacy and said, I support defunding the police. What's so funny about this also is that this isn't working as a strategy. It's the Kamala strategy 2.0, right? Oh, let's concede a little bit to that right-wing leaning. Let's concede a bit to the centrists to try to make our messaging seem less radical and more palatable. And meanwhile, they're dog walking her for this, right? Look, this is a piece from CNN, one of several opinion pieces you'll see about this right now. Democrats like AOC are trying to shrug off their woke era. That's bad for our politics. They want to figure out how to explain away some of the far left things they said since circa 2019 and 2020. They're already moving to say this is just an example of how dangerous these Democrats are, these progressives. They literally don't even believe in what they say. They just try to push the envelope in a certain direction. Like, you guys just give them the game over and over again and then get confused as to why folks like me or others who are outraged by this betrayal of one's values keep infighting. All this talk about leftist infighting, little talk about what can each of us do to actually stand by these principles we're supposed to be for. Everything's about packaging, everything's about nuance, everything's about imagery. A lot of people on Twitter pushed back on this. I'll just show you two of the tweets that I like. This one from Dita Wita. Woke One was the closest the US polity came to acknowledging reality in a while, probably since the 60s. It's no wonder it's being denigrated now. Arnie Ness. If you're a Democrat looking to disown police abolitionists, the least you can do is have the decency to look them in the eye and tell them you now think they're overreacting to police killing black people. None of this cowardly woke one smokescreen. Okay, this is actually a writer, John Kendall, who recently published this piece about fossil capital, Arnie Ness. I've shared his work on my channel before, so I wanted to shout him out. Beyond that, I think it's really gendered. I think a lot of you actually just want to dunk on women because the fact is that other politicians have done this over and over again. Many of them are men, and you don't hold them to the same account. One of the classic examples being Zohran Mamdani, who also, several months ago, a year ago, walked back comments calling to defund the police department while he was running for mayor. And in fact, has also, stupid New York Times, walked back even his moderation of police reform policy and continued to hire more officers and in fact back police officers in instances where they were in the wrong. Like when he praised police officers who shot Bangladeshi immigrant Jabez Chakraborty in Queens, who was experiencing a mental health crisis and was gunned down by NYPD officers. As the family was detained, interrogated, and denied access to their wounded son, Mamdani chose to express his gratitude to the first responders who put themselves on the line each day to keep our communities safe. This was followed by a crackdown on a peaceful anti-ICE protest in Manhattan, where the NYPD's Strategic Response Group, SRG, long denounced by civil rights groups, arrested multiple demonstrators. Mamdani had previously pledged to disband the SRG. Doesn't look like that's happening anytime soon. I know that this is kind of dispiriting for a lot of folks who enjoy a lot of what Mamdani has contributed. I'm not going to act like he has done nothing that New Yorkers might benefit from, whether it's reforms about, changing trash cans on the street, whether it's the moves that he's doing towards making buses faster. These things are nice. But this is what politicians do. They are not our friends. They are tools that we're supposed to use. Everything that a politician like Zohran Mamdani might accomplish, regardless of what kind of personality he might have, is a result of people organizing to push for policy change, organizing to push for marginalized communities to be represented better. That is what causes folks like Abdul El-Sayed to win the Democratic nomination for Senate in Michigan. That's what causes Zoran to win the mayorship. That's what causes other more progressive candidates around the United States to win office. It's not that they're this new brand of politicians with integrity. It really has very little to do with age, as a lot of people keep getting distracted by. It's about the fact that people are sick and tired of AIPAC, and that push, that organized push online and offline, has caused now politicians to take notice and say, how can I align with this more so I can get elected? That's how this works. It shouldn't be about how you feel about Zohran Mamdani as a person, whether you think he's the worst or think he's a snide, condescending prick, or whether you think he's a really nice guy trying his best. Same thing about AOC. Same thing about Francesca Hong. These are two women politicians who are frankly not particularly remarkable and are among the most progressive elected officials in terms of their voting records. Sad as that is to say. But they get dunked on because it's easier to dunk on women. because it's easier to just jump on the fake criticism of what an asshole this person is, what a bad person, what a B word this person is, instead of the actual criticism that we should be doing, which is of the system entirely and pushing for it more and more to acquiesce to our demands. All of this distraction work that people are doing is meant to make you think about individuals and their personality cults, is meant to make you think about how nice somebody is or how rude somebody is. Thank you, Chinyere, for the donation. I thought people didn't care about Hong's past social media excursions, but she did backtrack and still lost. Yes, important to point out, Chinyere, that Francesca Hong did all that shit to lose. Okay, did all that shit to not even get the Democratic primary nomination. And you have all these supposedly concerned folks who just want to get rid of Trump, but say things like this on TikTok. Defund the police was just really bad marketing. The logic was reallocate funds so less police is necessary, but people are so dense and stupid that they did not get that. Democrats need to market better. This kind of appealing to people's sentiments, appealing to people's ideas about whether or not something is palatable, whether or not something is popular, would have been the same kind of thing that got the civil rights movement derailed in the 60s. Look up the Gallup polls about what white Americans thought of the civil rights movement, what they thought about the demonstrators, some of them that are considered violent demonstrators, what they thought about, black people moving into their neighborhoods. And yet black organizers pushed and pushed and pushed until politicians were forced to acquiesce. And that gave us the Civil Rights Act in this country, which did not represent revolution. It did not represent immediate emancipation and the end of global anti-blackness, much less US anti-blackness. What it represented was people organizing against the establishment and pushing the establishment, forcing the establishment to acquiesce to its demands. And a lot of you do not have that sense of things. This is not just about politicians. Like I said, this is about how a lot of you move, whether you're content creators, whether you're regular people in your workplace, in your friend groups. A lot of you do not have the balls to cut off people who are like Trump supporters, but you want to sit over here and talk about AOC. You don't want to stand on the defund the police rhetoric because you think it's too conflictual, forgetting the fact that defund the police was a watered down version of abolish the police in the first place. And the purpose of such a slogan was not to get people elected. It was not to create a good policy platform for somebody to win office. Abolish the police is a slogan / a movement created by people organizing against the state, people who are refusing to be silent about the realities of how police operate, about the unpunished murders of black people that are common, that are part and parcel of everyday life in the United States and in other countries around the world, because police are police. Frankly, it's kind of absurd how much people like to think about whether or not something's a popular idea, whether or not something is easy to agree with. And meanwhile, like 80% of people are in agreement that trans people deserve rights. We have the statistics even as of this year, even as of the growth and popularity of a bizarre hate campaign, a grossly misinformed campaign against trans people in sports. Look up the science on that and then come back to me if you have problems with me saying that. But like people of all races and ethnic identities, gender identities, even Republicans who agree that transgender people should have the same ability as everyone else to get the healthcare that they need. 8 in 10 agreeing that transgender people should be protected from discrimination in hiring. They should be protected from discrimination and harassment in schools. This is just a brief overview of what a lot of people will confirm for you in real life, which is that folks don't give a fuck about whether or not a trans person's in their neighborhood. And yet that doesn't stop Republican legislators and Republican pundits, Republican media companies, Republican organizations, right-wing organizations in the United States, as well as in the global South, so to speak, many of whom are backed by fundamentalists from the United States, of pushing the anti-trans agenda, trans people, down people's throats as if they would give a fuck about such a thing, and pushing then policy about removing trans people's access to healthcare, forcing trans people to identify as something that they don't identify as. So the right wing operates with a full understanding that it is on them to push the agenda, that it is on them to push something even if it's obviously unpopular, because the point is not being popular, the point is getting something done. Now, this is not to say that left wing and right wing should imitate each other. There are obvious differences in how a left wing would operate, because the left wing, right wing dynamic dichotomy is just another one of those illusions of colonialism. The reality is that the colonizer pushes with impunity because that's what colonization does. The colonizer attacks with violence and violence and violence because that's what the colonizer can do. The colonizer has the gun, the bomb. The colonizer has the ability to force us to do anything. That's why the colonizer can move as they do. But all these progressive officials, electoral candidates, talking heads, pushing for folks with Nazi tattoos and Blackwater mercenary backgrounds, All of these progressive figures that are constantly talking about the negotiations that we need to make, the slowdowns we need to do, the measured compromises that we need to accomplish in order to get the thing that we need. They exist for a reason too. They exist to continue that illusion for you. That illusion that going bad, well, that's just something that is an aberration. But going good, that's just something that requires very little effort. Pushing for the right thing, doing the right thing, fighting colonialism, fighting capitalism, or even just fighting for any type of justice. These are things that can be done with a simple handshake. These are things that can be done with a simple, measured approach to trying to give people hugs and kisses. These are things that happen because we slowly but surely convince everybody to go with the right thing, to do the right thing. Whereas the real radical organizers, the ones that were in Ferguson for the Great Ferguson Uprising, many of whom were killed, we can get into that in a bit, they understand that the point is to be the sledgehammer back. The point is to fight back. The point is to push the radical imagery, the radical imaginary. And not everybody's going to be a radical. It's not an easy thing to do. It requires that you risk a lot. It requires that you lose a lot of friends and a lot of sleep sometimes. And it requires that you don't make money the way that other people make money. But as this empire is on the verge of collapse, as this empire continues to falter more and more in ways that doomers simply refuse to acknowledge, as the empire makes drastic mistake after drastic mistake, fails to adapt to the changing global environment, fails to adapt to climate disaster in ways that will harm its constituency and its ability to rule, fails to adapt with the times, fails to adapt with the technology, fails to adapt with the changing landscape of demographics, all of these things that empires usually are good at when they're doing well. As the empire continues to falter, why in the hell would anybody want to be popular in a world like this? Why would anybody want to get success and big piles of money in a world that is explicitly rewarding exploitation? Like, I'm not saying you don't need to get money. I want to pay the bills, you want to pay the bills. I'm not saying you shouldn't want a lot of money. But a lot of money for most of us is the ability to pay the bills with comfort, get some things we want, have a safe, secure place to live. A lot of money might be, what people would call middle or upper middle class. A lot of money, like being a billionaire, has nothing to do with integrity. There's nothing that you could want that being a billionaire would give you other than the approval of the boys club, other than being able to fit in with the types of people that are destroying the world. And so why would I care about my messaging being a little too radical, about defund or abolish the police being something that most people won't agree with, when I know that the history of struggles around this world, especially since the rise of European colonialism, has been one of people pushing for unpopular things, because it's not a matter for them of whether or not something's unpopular. It's a matter for them of whether or not they can breathe. You think the Haitian Revolution was popular amongst the French? And so what we are being called to do right now is evaluate which of these people are going to just have to be left behind. Elected politicians, again, there's a reason why people push, right? For certain candidates to be elected. There's a reason why people celebrate when certain candidates do get elected, because it is a representation, one of many different representations of what can happen when people work together. Mamdani being elected in New York City was a testament to the fact that young people could get together and knock on doors and call people and demonstrate for certain of their values to be met. And that can be celebrated while at the same time recognizing that Zohran Mamdani's integrity has nothing to do with it. That Zohran Mamdani being a radical or not has nothing to do with it. But again, y'all want to talk about holding politicians accountable and how politicians are not your friends up until a politician comes around with a little too much riz. And now all of a sudden, when people go and talk about how he needs to do certain things differently and try to push him farther in the same way that they would have pushed to have gotten him there in the first place, people want to be on Twitter, on Instagram, oh, well, he's working hard. Oh, well, you guys are just wanting everything so fast. Same shit over and over again. Bye, you're gone. You're not a part of this world that we're building. You're not. Black Lives Matter was not some blip or some unserious expression of a progressive movement in infancy, which is the type of thing that people joke about when they say woke one. Woke one is supposed to be a reference towards fucking Nancy Pelosi in a kente cloth. Woke one is supposed to be a reference to, I don't know, people wanting representation, Asian representation in media, stop Asian hate being dominated by police activists, people who actually want the police to get more involved with attacking Black people on Asian Americans' behalf. Woke one, when people were joking about it from a real radical perspective, was supposed to be this acceptance of a bastardized paradigm and joking about it in different stages, trying to challenge the bastardized terminology by joking about it. But very obviously, non-black people can't get the fucking message. Non-black people will always sell this shit out. And then they get surprised when their politicians sell them out. Non-black people heard woke one and heard jokes about like liberal identity politics and heard jokes about Kamala and AOC at the camp on the gate doing this or the eat the rich dress. And they were like, wow, yeah, that was true. That's woke one. That's right. Defund the police. How stupid. Remember when we were all out posting the black square? Well, damn, that was crazy times. Now we're doing real politics. Now we're doing real stuff like yelling about Zionists on social media, which please go at the Zionists, but don't do so while selling out other causes that are part and parcel tied, as Yahya Sinwar would have told you himself, with the Palestinian liberation movement, and then pretend that you're pushing against Zionism because you have principles and not because it gets you likes on Twitter. Regardless, as important as it is that we shift our politics into anti-capitalist and anti-imperialist directions, and I do think that society is pushing farther towards socialism, society is pushing farther against capitalism, pushing farther against imperialism. I think it's a slower process than it might look on social media, but I think that there are changes happening, okay? And the ways people have shifted in their opinion of Israel is a testament to that. Regardless, as important as that is, such a shift is impossible without addressing the exploitations of black peoples worldwide. It doesn't matter that some black people make money, okay? I don't know why white people keep pretending like they get tripped up about this. I don't know why white people are trying to bring reverse racism back. I don't know if you guys saw that one white guy on TikTok who was talking about, if you're a white guy dating black women, I'm going to say something that might be controversial, but you need to hear it. You got to get a gun. You gotta get a gun because black men are gonna come at you. They're trying to do this reverse racism shit again. Oh, you gotta get armed because the savage black man is going to attack you for dating black women. They're trying to do the reverse racism shit over and over again. They're trying to ignore anti-blackness. They're trying to make it look like the black people were so silly for focusing on their own problems when genocide is happening. And meanwhile, the folks who are being genocided are like, hey, we're in solidarity with black Americans. Even some of the largest black liberal voices, like Ta-Nehisi Coates, have been outspoken about the direct comparisons and the obvious moral failings of Democrat politicians, black Democrat politicians, for continuing genocide in Gaza. But this is what non-black people do. They sell out, they sell out, they sell out. Because they're not selling out. They're trying to build with people that are destroying them. That's not your karma. If you're not interested in building with the people that are going to sell you out, if you're not interested in getting swept up over and over again impulsively into whatever trendy, progressive-ish seeming thing is happening, if you're actually interested in sitting back and being a little bit patient and thinking about what to do and trying to focus on building real community and trying to focus on divesting more and more from the largest corporations, from the most damaging parts of this system on a scale more and more, if you're interested in doing that, then it's high time that we actually claim this power because it's so obviously there. Again, somebody like AOC or Mamdani or somebody like Francesca Hong would not have been here in this position, pushing for slightly farther left positions in Congress and in the Senate and in the mayorship and potentially in the presidency. They wouldn't have been here without black radical organizers. They wouldn't have been here without Black Lives Matter, without small groups of people who would have been seen as not capable of doing anything. Okay? Our power is here. Are we going to claim it or not? Or are we going to keep running away from it? Here's a cool example. This is like a clip from a Hassan stream, but he was just basically looking at a clip that got disseminated on social media as like, this is why woke one happened or whatever. This is a can't ever die on Twitter's tweet. So I'm just going to show you this clip.
In the first place, just don't watch whenever they talked about literally anything from a Japanese game studio. What is
of Japanese history? Because who knows anything about Japanese history? There were some samurai. They periodically killed themselves. A rat learned judo, and they invented a religion that sanctifies small trees and fat guys wrestling. Then we nuked them. That's what they turned into a real country.
To see what the PS3 can do with a hack and slash is not.
So this type of stuff was so common and it's not anymore. And people are scared to do that type of shit anymore. And that's why non-black people are mad. Because they used to live in a world where they could go out and say wild stuff. Even 10 years ago. If you watch, I was watching some MTV reality TV show, and I had watched some of like the newer seasons and then gone back to the first season to be like, what did it look like then? And like 10, 20 minutes into the episode, you have people making casual jokes about black women, casual jokes about black chicks, casual jokes about date Like, this type of shit was common. You watch old movies from the 2000s, not old, like literally just from our childhood, those periods of time we keep getting tricked into being nostalgic for. It was horrible, bro. People were actively hateful in ways that were hard to get your head around looking back, because so many people have done so much activism work. Whether or not you fully agree with their ideological slants, people pushed so that folks could be less homophobic. People pushed so that companies would be scared to discriminate. People pushed so that society would be more cognizant of how it looks to be racist. And a lot of people gained opportunities from that. A lot of genuine community was built out of that. It wasn't just the fake shit. But what happens is the fake shit always shows up. There's always a period of time where things are blowing up, and then there's a period of time when the fake shit, the NPCs, catch on to shit and then co-opt it. This is how politics moves. This is how political and social and cultural change moves. You are always going to see co-optation. You are always going to see attempts to backtrack. You are always going to see attempts. Just the same way that Lenin talked about Marx in the early 20th century. There will always be attempts after a person's dead by the system that person railed against to say, what a great example. What a wonderful example of an outspoken critic. You might not have always agreed with him, but he truly did push for a better world. Meanwhile, while that person's alive, they're trying to kill him. Same shit that they did with Martin Luther King. So seeing this type of shit from AOC, frankly, that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's like nothing. Go read what happened to the Ferguson uprising organizers. Multiple articles about this. 6 men tied to the Ferguson protests dying. 3 in apparent suicides. 2 dead inside torched cars. Police always trying to say that they have nothing to do with foul play. We don't believe any of them were connected to each other, said the police spokesman years ago. This is an article about the lives of Ferguson and BLM activists cut short. Darren Seals, DeAndre Joshua, Danae Jones. Darren Seals had FBI after him. This was an activist, a young activist who was a vocal advocate against gun violence, co-founded a collective called Hands Up United, and then he was found shot to death in a car. Do you remember how in the late 2000s, early 2010s, there was a rise of like these organized movements around the world, basically just to rebel against institutions? There was Occupy Wall Street, there was the Arab Spring, there were springs everywhere, there was a huge protest movement in Brazil. These movements had a significant impact. They weren't just blips. They're trying to convince you that these things didn't mean anything. But if they didn't mean anything, then we would be the same way that we were then. We're not the same exact way that we were then. Occupy Wall Street still has an impact. The protests against police in Brazil still have an impact. Just because the system is still the system does not mean that your push against it had no impact. And these Ferguson uprising leaders, they had significant impact. That's why the state comes after them. You can't sit here and say at the same time that people who try to change the world will get attacked by elites, will get attacked by the establishment, by the powers that be, and also say that they have nothing to do, that they have no impact. You can't say both. Fred Hampton is still impactful in today's day and age. And so the same way, I saw a really good tweet about it actually by Moira Donegan. Backlash is an inevitable feature of any social movement. It is not in itself evidence that the social movement failed. If you think there is some exact, precise posture, tone, and position that you can take that will make everyone see the wisdom of your politics and grant dignity and freedom to the marginalized group whose interests you seek to represent, I've got bad news for you. The upside of this is that since backlash is unavoidable, you might as well demand what you want. You might as well demand what you want. You are going to get backlash. People will push against you. Sometimes those people will look like they are winning. Oftentimes. And if that sucks, non-black people, to feel like you're standing up for something, but then a bunch of people who are supposed to be on your side are taking you down, guess what? That's a sliver of what the black experience is like. That's a sliver of what the black woman experience is like, what the trans experience is like. And then years from now, they will co-opt the shit that you said. The fabric of the society will change and they will claim it is because of them. The same people who are fucking fighting you will 5 years later be saying the same thing that you said, pretending that you never said it, and then claiming that all the change that has happened since you said it was because of them. This is EJ Dubs. Thank you for bringing this up, Elliot. Never forget Fred Hampton. Thank you so much for the $10 donation. You push and push and push, and then you win, and they don't acknowledge it for you. You're not going to get acknowledgement from the system that you beat it. People are waiting for the fucking president of the United States to say the empire is falling, to maybe be like, oh, maybe it's right that the empire is falling. People keep trying to claim that they're on your side while diminishing every single thing that your movement has done. They keep trying to claim that they're on your side while ignoring all the work that you have done to actually change things. You think beating Andrew Cuomo was nothing? You think just because Zohran Mamdani is going to sell out like every other politician sells out, that beating Andrew Cuomo was nothing? That wresting AIPAC from the highest executive office in New York City was nothing? You think Lula da Silva being elected in Brazil in the late 90s, presiding over a very popular presidency, then getting kicked out by the far right, thrown in jail, and then through the work of organizers across different ideologies, pushing to get Lula da Silva out of jail and then bring him back into the presidency. You think all that means nothing just because Lula da Silva is also at the end of the day a politician? Just because Lula at the end of the day is not a revolutionary? Just because Lula da Silva at the end of the day is a liberal, quote unquote? Of course he is. That's not the fucking point. Because you know the system is going to be the system, you don't wait for the big socialist to show up on the chair and say, I'm the socialist. We do the socialism now. And then CNN goes, well, I guess we do the socialism now. Learn how to see with your own eyes. Don't wait for the confirmation. Thank you, Crunchy Skull. Exactly. Keep caring about stuff. It works. It does work. So let's talk about what we need to care about now. Because it needs to be illuminated to you, fighting for a free Palestine and fighting for an end to capitalism and pushing as organizers against all of these problems, so to speak, that come with colonialism and capitalism, does not require that you toss aside Black people's issues as peripheral. Well, that's sad, but we can't focus on that right now. We got to focus on affordability. We can't focus on that right now. We got to focus on Gaza. And Yahya Sinwar is talking about the Black struggle and the Palestinian struggle are the same. Don't let them fucking brainwash you, man. Don't let non-Black people brainwash you, okay? As a non-Black person, I'm telling you, non-Black people are brainwashed and they're trying to brainwash you. You think you live in a world right now where anti-Blackness has been solved? Do you think the United States has solved its anti-Blackness problem since BLM and now it's time to move on? Do you think that that's the reality? You think that ignoring Black people's issues will somehow just like get you closer to where you need to be on all the other issues? Are you out of it? In Ohio, Haitians' American dream shatters as ICE prepares to deport them. U.S. immigration has ramped up operations against Haitians, whose temporary protected status was removed by Trump. Haitians are essentially facing a global genocide right now. Because in Haiti, U.S. imperialism and NATO imperialism continues to put its boot against any movement to elect and to maintain institutions that are progressive. It runs corrupt aid organizations that take advantage of the locals, and it extracts and extracts and extracts from countries like Haiti. Sexual abuse from the United Nations in Haiti. Look it up. And meanwhile, like Head Turner says, you got forces from Kenya coming to Haiti to tamp down on the Haitian gangs, aka tamp down on Haitian people. And everywhere that Haitians go around the world, they are treated like shit. Every single place in the world that Haitians go, they are treated like dog shit. Attacked, exploited, ignored, and used as the demographic that everybody is, almost in the Afro-pessimist sense, to compare themselves to in order to recognize their own humanity. Well, at least you're not one of those Haitians. This is one of those things about anti-Blackness that people don't want to recognize, is that like people keep getting caught up in this dynamic of like, well, it's not about Blackness, it's about ethnic group. It's about specific Black people. The same joke that they've been doing the whole time, right? But folks around the world would like to pretend that their anti-Blackness is not the same because it's not the same as US anti-Blackness. And they'll point to you certain Black people that are treated well in their country, as if we don't know how this goes. As if anti-Blackness is not a system of otherization of Black people, of African descended people. And then through that otherization, the categorization of people who are considered Black, who are racialized, into categories of tolerance. There will always be the good Blacks in a society, and those good Blacks will be dehumanized too. I have issues with Afro-pessimism, at least in terms of the Wilderson book, but the framework of understanding that anti-Blackness is at the center of all of this, that is fundamentally undeniable. You cannot be a socialist without having special attention to anti-Blackness. Anti-Black people are the untouchables of a world system, okay? If you're from India, you know what I mean by untouchables. Black people are the untouchables of a world system. And anywhere that you go, yes, you will see some Black people being treated well in a way that is, one, a type of benevolent racism / more hidden and nuanced racism, and two, is contrasted with the racism that they really want to give to the bad Black people. So you go to France and like, yeah, there's a lot of French Black people that are like, well, I don't experience that much racism here. I mean, I do experience it, but it's not that bad for me. So that non-Black or white French people specifically can be like, see, we treat Black people good here. It's just those fucking Haitians. It's just those Senegalese people that just come over on the boat. Those Malian people that are looking for work. They're the ones who are taking up all of our problems, that are taking up all of our space, taking up all of our jobs. This is how anti-Blackness works. Northern Ireland. Do you remember? Because I will never forget. June 2026, we had pogroms against Black migrants in Ireland, which of course spilled over into harassment and fear for nationalized Black Irish people, Black Northern Irish people. 86 households had to contact the housing executive after riots burned down houses. far-right agitation over migration sent white Irish people into the streets in Northern Ireland to burn down migrant housing. Oh, don't even get me started on like the way that they look at Arabs, the way they look at Arab people in France. Don't even get me started. Or we are entering the age of the Afro-Latino at some point soon. Or we can look at how anti-blackness works in Latin America, something I've talked about now like 3 times in 3 different videos. Colombia just had an earthquake. Colombia just had an earthquake. Colombia just had an earthquake. That's what you hear, right? In the news, on CNN, on BBC. Colombia had an earthquake. True. The country of Colombia had an earthquake. What part of Colombia got hit? Where was the epicenter of the earthquake? They don't want to tell you this, right? They don't want to tell you this. It happened in Chocó. Okay, let me play Eileen Yvette's video on Instagram.
For a magnitude earthquake on August 10th, and the epicenter of that was in Chocó on Colombia's Pacific coast, the department with the largest concentration of Black Colombians in the country. More than 80% of Chocó's population is Black. After the earthquake, communication is still a major problem across parts of Chocó, meaning that families still haven't been able to call and find out if their family is okay. Some community leaders are also saying that the biggest issue right now is missing people, but you wouldn't know how severe and bad it is in the region based on the lack of media coverage right now. And this is where structural racism comes in. See, the Pacific coast has been called the Forgotten Coast for generations because neglect is essentially the policy. It means that a region that is 90% Black can spend decades with less infrastructure, resources, and access to basic necessities. So when a disaster hits, all of those inequalities are amplified. Because when there is no internet or cell service, how are you supposed to tell people that you need help? Or when the roads are difficult to navigate or there are no roads, how are you supposed to evacuate people who are seriously injured? When hospitals are already dealing with limited resources, how are they supposed to help thousands of people who need help too? Colombia's own National Human Rights Agency has described the racism affecting Black communities as structural, pointing to the persistent gaps in healthcare, education, employment, and basic rights. And you see this pattern across all of Colombia's Pacific coast. My family is from Buenaventura, and after the earthquake, major landslides have blocked off the main road connecting Buenaventura towards Cali and Colombia's interior. Many people depend on that road for food, medicine, fuel, and basic necessities. So now you have people worried about what happens to us if this road doesn't reopen quickly. Cali, where my family lives, was also hit really hard. Buildings have been damaged and some collapsed. They are incredibly important to Colombia culturally and economically, but they have spent decades fighting for reliable water, electricity, healthcare, and again, basic infrastructure. The earthquake didn't create those conditions, it exposed them. Rescue operations are underway and we're still finding out how bad the damage is, but communities on the Pacific coast need your help. If you are outside of Colombia and you would like to donate, I've linked reputable local Afro-Colombian organizers in my caption and in my...
So I wanted to make sure I played that whole thing. This is why Black Lives Matter is not dead. This is why Woke One was not crazy. It was a extremely rational response, finally, to the realities of anti-Blackness everywhere. That's why it was a global movement from Brazil to Japan. They were out in Japan with it, okay? And this conversation, had you been having it fully in 2020, would have prepared you well for October 7th because there were so many established linkages between the Black solidarity movements, the Black police and prison abolition movements in the United States, not just with anti-Blackness and conversations about anti-Blackness globally, but with the Palestinian movement. One such example from that article I was showing you earlier, one of the multiple organizers in Ferguson that was killed was Bassem Mazri, Palestinian-American BLM activist who was widely known for live streams of Ferguson protests in the aftermath of Michael Brown's death. He wrote in Ferguson, "I am reminded of Palestine. While the wall of segregation and inequality in Palestine is a physical one, the wall in Ferguson is invisible to those who wish to turn away. Only Blacks in St. Louis understand their own situation. They face constant harassment and the fear of being detained without due process or basic dignity. When I stand with the people in Ferguson, I regard them as Palestinians." He died of a fentanyl overdose at 31 years old, and multiple people have raised red flags about his death. There is no qualifying oppression, like Rolando says, to these people. To the people that still sit here and act confused and I don't know, what should I do? I don't know, but why are we focusing on Black Americans when they're privileged? As if focusing on the individual that you're thinking about who is in a position of privilege is the way to think about politics. As if we're not talking about a force that for centuries has propped up the global system. This global system is propped up off of the back of 300 years of global Black genocide, the transatlantic slave trade. Without the transatlantic slave trade, there are no Americas. There are no Americas as they stand now. And without the Americas, this capitalism, this European capitalism, would not have extended to the degree that it does. You wouldn't have had sugar in English tea. So we can put this all together in the same picture and recognize this for what it is. Or, yeah, it gave them tips on how to treat tear gas burns, correct. Or we can still pretend to get confused. There's just no time for the people that don't get it. There's no time for them. You got to just let them fucking go down whatever path they're going to go down because they keep getting slapped in the face over and over again. The only people that matter right now are the people that get it. And the people that get it, we're beyond just trying to raise awareness. We are at a point now where the important thing is to build this community that we have among other people that get it. Even if they aren't as well read as we are, even if they don't speak the same language that we do, even if they don't have as much time to get into politics, or if they're online or if they're offline, or if they identify with a specific tendency or they don't. This isn't really even about politics. Do you understand? This isn't really even about politics. This isn't even really about economics. Like, we can do the Marxism right now and it comes down to the economic base, but this really isn't even about economics because that's what Marx said too. It's not about economics. It's about power and all this other stuff, the economic theories that they created and the social theories that they created and the anthropology of human history that they created, even half the science that they created. All of it comes down to a gaslighting campaign because to recognize anti-Blackness and fight it is to have clear vision. This is something that non-Black people have to understand. And then they won't. So, because whatever. But like the folks who understand what it means to fight for Black people understand that top of the list is being willing to lose. Being willing to lose. This is why I don't trust a single leftist who's like, don't you guys just want to win? No, I don't want to win with you. Anybody who's sitting over here just thinking about, but how are we going to win? Doesn't know how the fuck to fucking move. Being in radical solidarity means being willing to lose in order to gain. It means being willing to lose friends, to lose power. Pushing to win elections and winning them, but also being willing to lose because you have principles. It means being willing to lose money. It means being willing to lose opportunities. It means being willing to sometimes feel like you're losing sanity. But in reality, there's nothing more sane than being pro-Black. That is why it's all worth it. Because if your efforts result in one Black person getting out of jail for something that he didn't commit, for a crime that she didn't commit, paying for bail funds, if your activism means that people in a community have a community garden and it's resourced well, and so they don't have to worry about going to the supermarket, then you've done something. You don't need the clout here. You don't need the recognition here. You don't need the big tan suit. You don't need it. Now, when we're in the point of pro-Blackness, when that is at the center of what we're doing, and by the center, I mean like being pro-Black and anti-Palestinian doesn't exist. Being pro-Black and pro-like imperialism in Latin America, that doesn't exist. Like, you can't do that. That doesn't exist. But once you recognize that, and once then pro-Blackness is at the soul, the core of your work, not just like your political activism, but literally how you treat people in real life, literally how you do your job, literally how you feed people. Once that's at the center, promise you that's happiness. Promise you you're going to win things. Promise you you're going to change people. It's just in the material world, it's going to feel like you're not sometimes, many times. In the material world, it's going to feel like you're everybody's fucking dog sometimes. But I promise you, you will see the real underground of this world when you do that. And so here's what we're going to do. Thank you. Oh, let me read Chinyeri's comment. If winning means throwing vulnerable people under the bus, losing is much better, or your movement dying is much better. Yeah, here's what we're going to do. For one, we don't have time to be fearful anymore. We don't have time to be, I don't know, I'm scared. No time. Listen to your fears, respect them, work through them. We don't have time. You don't have time. You can't spend a single day with these people anymore. You can't. You're going to lose it. You're going to pass out. Much less conversations about elsewhere. Second of all, this woke, I don't want to be the too woke friend. Ooh, not to be too woke, but we're done. It's over. We told you what this was. We told you that this was allowing people to co-opt the term. It was allowing people to demean the movement. We told you that that was going to be the case. You didn't listen. Now you got AOC. Woke one was crazy. This is what you got. Read it and weep. So from now on, you will never be afraid of being the too woke friend again. So help me God. The next time you are afraid of being the too woke friend, I'm not saying being afraid of being incorrect, perhaps, but the next time you're afraid of being the too woke friend, slap yourself in the face. Slap yourself in the face. Because get the hell out of here. What are you talking about? Whether that's, hey, there's something that my friends did at this party that I didn't like, say it. Or don't be friends with them anymore. Hey, this person, you know, I thought this person was my friend, but he, I don't know, like he posted some really racist shit. That's not your friend. You tell him about it and either he realizes it or it's not your friend. Oh, but then I won't have any friends. Good. If all of your friends are racist, you don't have any friends. Go ask Nolan Wells about that shit. This is, again, like, we're not even just talking about at the global scale, right? I haven't even taken the time out to point out that police violence has not declined since Black Lives Matter. Because for some of you, it's going to be like, oh, these US Black Americans, they're just like up their own asses. They don't, you have no idea what we see out here. You have no idea what we see and hear out here, bro. And also, is it like Black Americans, or is it that Black people are the most racially discriminated against in the United States? Which one is it? And if it's both, does that mean that they deserve it because they're the worst Black people? Please explain to me in a succinct comment. Regardless, we have multiple accounts all over the place about death, all over the world, about violence happening all over the world to Black people, but in the United States included. This is from March. New report says lynching evolved in the US, not ended. A Mississippi-based civil rights group identified 70 modern-day lynchings in 7 southern states. And that's not even to speak about the cases in the rest of the country. Check out my video about class and race. You can't talk about class without talking about race. There's a clip I watched in there. We have more clips like that. We can go over it over and over again. Nolan Wells, okay? This is an article from July by Stephanie Gadlin on the Chicago Crusader, From Trees to Water, same questions. We have this case. Daniel Irving drowned April 13th after he, 19-year-old Lucas Roper, and a 17-year-old juvenile went fishing and swimming at Lake Ray Hubbard. Julianne Zita was reported missing April 28th. 10 days later, a volunteer found her hanging from a tree on the grounds of the United House of Prayer for All People. The police classified that death as a suicide. Don't make us say the line again. Black people don't do that. They don't do that. Black people do not publicly hang themselves from trees. That's not a thing. That is not a thing. And if it is a thing, you got to do more fucking investigation than one day of, well, I didn't really get a response. It looks like a suicide. Let's keep going. It's case after case. Tonia Miller. So it's just like, give me a break about all this, like, oh, I don't have time for pro-Black stuff. I don't have the space. I don't have the space for pro-Black stuff. It's a little too woke. We don't have the time for that. People can't afford groceries because you keep doing that and your grocery bill keeps going up anyway. So I don't know what the hell you're talking about, except that you don't like Black people. I don't know what you're talking about. Those people gone. They don't exist to me. Okay. The rest of us, we're here. We got work to do. We got work to do.